Hey there! Welcome back to the Little Word Podcast, where curiosity is our compass and wonder is our way of seeing. I'm your host, Jane, and today we've reached the final chapter of our Mind Beyond Matter series. It's been a quiet ride, hasn't it? We've wandered through forests that think, through memories that build their own architecture, through vibrations, dreams, and thought forms, each one showing us that consciousness is far stranger and far vaster than we were ever told. And now, for the finale, we're turning our gaze to something both ordinary and miraculous, the act of perception itself. Because if everything we've learned so far is true, then reality might not be something that simply happens to us. It might be something we're helping to make. So, find a quiet space, take a deep breath, and let's step together into the final doorway, the one that leads to the realization that reality is malleable and the mind is a quiet sculptor. Have you ever wondered if what you're seeing right now, the colors, the shapes, the world, is really what's out there, or just what your mind expects to be there? We like to think of our senses as little windows to the truth. Our eyes, our ears, our skin. Faithful messengers bringing us the world exactly as it is. But according to modern neuroscience, that's not how it works at all. Your brain isn't a camera recording reality. It's more like a storyteller, one that's guessing what happens next, then editing the details to make sure the story still makes sense. This is the idea called predictive processing, and it flips everything we thought we knew about perception. Instead of waiting for the world to tell us what's happening, the brain is already predicting it second by second, frame by frame. Think of it this way. Your brain is constantly running simulations. It uses memories, habits, and expectations, what scientists call priors, to predict what your senses are about to experience. When the actual data from your eyes or ears comes in, the brain checks whether it matches the prediction. If it fits, great, no need to waste energy. The brain feels what's called prediction error, a fancy term for surprise. And the brain really hates being surprised. So it works fast, either updating its belief about the world or bending perception until things make sense again. That's why optical illusions work. Your brain fills in missing information to keep the world feeling stable. Now, here's where it gets even weirder. There's another concept called active inference, which means your brain doesn't just predict the world, it sometimes make it come true. Let's say you expect to see your hand move when you decide to wave. Your brain predicts that movement and your body obeys. In other words, you don't just perceive reality, you act to confirm it. Every decision, every motion, every habit is your mind trying to keep its internal story consistent with what it believes. It's like your thoughts are quietly steering your world to keep things familiar, safe from surprise. But that safety comes with a cost. Because to stay efficient, the brain has to ignore most of what's really out there. If it tried to process every sound, every color, every detail, you'd be overwhelmed. So it filters hard. At the gateway of your perceptions sits the thalamus, a tiny relay center in your brain. It only lets through the signals that matter. And sitting above it, the prefrontal cortex, your executive, your planner, decide what matters most. Both of them are like bouncers at the door of your consciousness. They choose which information gets in and which reality you'll experience. So when you hear someone say, "We see what we want to see," that's not just a saying, it's neuroscience. Our minds shape what we notice, what we ignore, and even what we believe is real. And this brings us to one of the brain's most curious habits, confirmation bias. It's that tendency to notice things that agree with what you already believe and overlook the rest. But in the predictive brain, this isn't a flaw. It's a feature. Your mind is built to find evidence that it's right because that's how it keeps the world predictable. Every time your belief gets confirmed, your internal model of reality grows stronger, and the brain rewards itself with a little chemical satisfaction that says, yes, the world still makes sense. When enough people share the same strong beliefs, Our individual models overlap, and suddenly we're living in a collective reality that feels just as solid as a stone. So maybe reality isn't as fixed as we think. Maybe what we call the world is just the most stable story our brains could agree on. So, if our brains are constantly predicting the world around us, if every color, sound, and sensation is filtered through what the mind already believes, then what exactly is real? Because here's the strange thing: even when the prediction is perfect, the image you see isn't. It's an edited version, a carefully crafted illusion, stitched together by your brain to make the chaos coherent. Take a moment to picture this: a white vase, or is it two black faces? That's the Rubin vase illusion. Your brain can't see both at once, it has to choose. It draws an invisible line somewhere between light and shadow and declares, this is figure and this is background. That's figure ground perception, the brain's way of imposing order on something ambiguous. It decides what deserves attention and what fades into the backdrop. Even the simple act of seeing an object, a cup, a tree, a person's face, isn't just light hitting your eyes. It's your mind constructing boundaries where none truly exists. You might think of it like staring at clouds. The sky offers only shapes and patterns, but your brain insists on making stories out of them. A dragon here, a ship there, a rabbit chasing the wind, and sometimes that insistence gets personal, like the ink blot test, where psychologists show you abstract splashes of black and ask, what do you see? The image doesn't hold meaning on its own. You give it meaning. Your brain reaches into its inner archive of memories and feelings and fills the void with something familiar. It's not about the ink at all. It's about the you that the ink brings to the surface. Even something as objective as color isn't fixed. Your brain quietly edits the world's palette in real time. It's called color constancy. The reason a white shirt looks white under golden sunlight and it still looks white under bluish fluorescent light. Technically, the light bouncing off that shirt has changed dramatically, but your mind refuses to accept that. It overrides the raw data, recoloring your perception so that your world stays familiar and stable. Because if every shift in lighting changed the way things look, you'd feel like the world was falling apart every time the sun went down. So your brain cheats. It bends reality just enough to keep things steady, a small illusion for the sake of comfort. Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. One of them, Edmund Husserl, asks, what happens if we stop assuming that the world exists as we see it? He called this practice epoche or epoche or bracketing, a way of suspending your automatic belief in what's real so you can observe your own experience before the mind edits it. In a way, it's like trying to catch your thoughts before they solidify into certainty, to glimpse the raw feed before the brain's filters sculpt it into story. It's not easy. We live so deeply inside our predictions that pure perception feels almost impossible. But that's the point. Phenomenology reminds us that even awareness itself is an act of creation. Writer Robert Anton Wilson had a phrase for this: the reality tunnel. He said, each of us walks around inside our personal tunnel, built from the filters of our upbringing, our culture, our fears, and our memories. Every belief you hold becomes a lens that shapes what you notice and what you ignore. And the longer you live through one particular tunnel, the more real it feels, until you forget that it's a tunnel at all. That's why two people can look at the same event, the same photo, the same person, and describe completely different worlds. They're not lying. They're just tuned to different frequencies of the same reality. Their brains each is sculpting meaning from the same ambiguous clay. There's a rule in physics that still feels like a riddle: the observer effect. In quantum experiments, tiny particles, electrons, photons, behave differently when we look at them. Unobserved, they move like waves, full of possibility. Observed, they collapse into something definite. It's as if the act of watching changes what's real. But what if this isn't just a law of the quantum world? What if the same principle plays out inside us, not with particles, but with perception, belief, and biology? You've probably heard of the placebo effect. How a sugar pill, if you believe it's medicine, can actually make you heal faster or feel less pain. It sounds mystical, but it's purely biology. When your brain expects relief, it releases real opioids, chemicals that numb pain, the same kind used in hospitals. We know this because when researchers gave patients naloxone, a drug that blocks opioids, the placebo stopped working. So it's not imagination, it's the mind literally manufacturing its own medicine. All of this begins in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that plans, anticipates, and predicts. It tells pain centers like the thalamus and anterior cingulate cortex to dial things down. And just like that, belief reshapes biology. People who are naturally optimistic tend to have stronger responses. Because their nucleus accumbens, the brain's reward center, is extra tuned to expectation. So people's brains are just better at making belief chemical. So yes, sometimes hope really hurts less. But the mind doesn't always heal. It can also harm. If you believe something will hurt you, it often does. This is the nocebo effect, the dark taint of the placebo. Negative expectations activate the body's stress pathways and even release chemicals that block painkillers produced by the brain. You can feel real symptoms from pure fear, just as you can feel relief from pure faith. It's the same mechanism, mirrored, the body following the story it's told. The mind's influence goes deeper than momentary chemistry. It can change the structure of the brain itself. That's what neuroplasticity means. Your thoughts, emotions, and habits sculpt your neurons like a sculptor molds clay. When you're under constant stress, levels of a protein called BDNF drop. BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So when this protein called BDNF drop, neurons wither, connections fade, especially in regions that help you think clearly and regulate emotion, the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. But when you practice focus, learning, or joy, when you stay open to new experiences, BDNF rises. Your neurons grow, connections multiply, optimism, curiosity, and effort become a kind of physical architecture. Your state of mind writes itself into your state of brain. And here's where science starts to sound like philosophy again. If what we expect can alter chemistry, if what we believe can rewire the brain, then maybe consciousness isn't just reacting to reality, maybe it's helping to create it. That idea isn't new. Philosophers call it idealism, the belief that mind is the foundation of matter. In phenomenology, experience is seen as our only true access to the world. And in Eastern philosophy, the world of form is called Maya or illusion, not because it's fake, but because it's shaped by perception. Reality, they say, is dependent origination, a web co-created by observer and observed. So when you believe, when you expect, when you observe, you're not just watching reality unfold, you're participating in its unfolding. If a single mind can shape its private world, what happens when millions of minds start dreaming the same dream? In physics, the observer changes the particle. In neuroscience, belief changes biology. But in society, belief changes the world. We like to think that reality is solid, that the systems around us are facts of nature, but most of what gives our lives a structure isn't carved into the earth, it's written in the collective imagination. Money, nations, laws, none of these exist in the physical sense. They live in the shared agreement that they matter. Paper becomes valuable because we all pretend it is. Borders exist because we all agree to stop at invisible lines. The very idea of right and wrong shifts from culture to culture, carried by stories that entire civilizations perform. This is what social theories call social constructionism, the idea that reality, at least the social kind, is built from collective belief, from a predictive processing lens. It's like our brains linking up into one massive network, trying to minimize collective prediction error. When we all agree what money buys or what a law means, the world feels stable. But when those agreements break, when economies crash or governments fall, reality itself starts to tremble and we scramble to rewrite the script. Those who control the script, of course, hold enormous power. Defining what's true or normal has always been a quiet tool of control, a way to keep the collective mind calm, predictable, obedient. If social constructionism explains what we believe together, memetics explain how those beliefs spread. Back in 1976, Richard Dawkins coined the word meme, not the funny internet kind, but the idea as organism kind. A meme is a self-replicating unit of culture, an idea that jumps from mind to mind, adapting, mutating, competing to survive. Every religion, trend, or ideology is made of them. Like genes in evolution, memes fight for attention, thriving when they resonate emotionally, when they help people feel safe, connected, or right. From this angle, culture is a living ecosystem of ideas. Some are benevolent, kindness, curiosity, cooperation. Others are predatory, fear, hatred, superstition, and all of them use us as their hosts. Each of us becomes both transmitter and incubator, a node in the endless replication of thought. It's the collective version of the predictive brain again, the mind spreading ideas that helps stabilize its social reality, sharing stories that make the world feel less uncertain. But why do certain stories echo through time? Why do we keep retelling the same myths of heroes, monsters, mothers, and wise old wanderers? Psychologist Carl Jung believe it's because beneath our individual minds lies a collective unconscious, a shared psychic layer containing ancient patterns called archetypes. They're like universal story templates coded into the species itself. The mother, the hero, the trickster, the shadow. These archetypes are the oldest symbols we carry. From a modern perspective, there are universal priors, the predictive templates that structure meaning long before reason arrives. They make human experience feel strangely familiar across time and culture. And if archetypes are the roots, then memes are the branches. New expressions growing from those same ancient shapes, evolving in the light of collective attention. Now, let's zoom in. If collective attention can form nations and religions, what happens when focused attention exists in a single mind? That's where tulpas and thought forms come in. We actually talked about this last week about how belief can conjure presence, how imagination, when sustained long enough, can create something that feels alive. Traditionally, tulpas come from Tibetan mysticism, entities born from meditation and intent. Theosophists later described them as mind made beings, thoughts that condense into form. Today, modern psychology frames them as vivid, self aware companions shaped by attention and repetition. In the language of neuroscience, they're loops of active inference that become self sustaining, predictions so consistent they stabilize into experience. So, on one scale, millions of minds build nations and gods. On another, a single mind builds a companion. In both, belief is the architect. We've followed the mind as it reached outward, the trees that think, the bodies that hum in frequency, the dreams that dissolve the line between self and elsewhere. But what if we've been heading inward all along? What if the universe we're studying isn't out there, but in here? The idea that consciousness can reshape reality isn't just philosophy, it's something we can measure. In labs around the world, scientists have placed long-term meditators under magnetoencephalography scanners, and what they found is astonishing. When these practitioners enter deep meditative states, when they describe themselves as timeless or spaceless, their brains literally shift. Activity in the posterior cingulate cortex, the part that gives your sense of I, and in the temporoparietal junction, the part that tells you where your body ends and the world begins, both change rhythm. In those moments, the body map blurs, the self dissolves, the mind loosens its grip on time and place. It's the brain quietly rewriting the boundaries of me. Reality bends inward, and the sense of who's doing the perceiving softens into something vast and whole. We've all heard about the observer effect, that strange principle in quantum physics, where simply observing a particle changes its behavior. In strict science, the observer isn't you or me. It's just a measuring device. No one is saying consciousness collapses atoms, but philosophically, the metaphor holds power. What if the act of expectation, not measurement, selects which version of reality unfolds for us? Perhaps consciousness doesn't exist inside the universe at all. Perhaps the universe exists inside consciousness as an image, a translation of infinite data into a form we can live in. That means your beliefs, your focus, your attention might not collapse reality, but could choose it, like tuning the dial of a cosmic radio to the frequency you're ready to hear. Ancient Indian philosophers called this world Maya, the great illusion. We walk around thinking we're separate, you, me, this microphone, that tree outside, when in truth, we're threads in the same tapestry. In Advaita Vedanta, everything, every cell, every star is Brahman, the infinite consciousness behind all forms. Our individual self, the Atman, is simply that same consciousness forgetting what it is for a little while. To awaken is to leave the veil of Maya, to see through the brain's final illusion that there was ever a you looking at the world. In a way, Maya is the ultimate prediction error. The species-wide belief that separateness is real. Spiritual practice, like deep meditation, is the act of creating one last enormous contradiction in the system, a signal so bright that it forces the model to update, revealing the unity beneath. The ancient Hermetic philosopher said, "As within, so without, as above, so below." It sounds mystical until you realize the brain already does this. There's a small network in your brainstem called the reticular activating system, the bouncer of your awareness. It filters everything you see, hear, and feel, letting in only what matches your current focus. So when you hold an intention, your RAS changes its filter. You start noticing patterns, signs, coincidences, not because they appeared out of nowhere, but because your mind tuned itself to them. Your inner world becomes the sorting algorithm of the outer one. The world bends slightly toward what you believe. As within, so without wasn't just spiritual poetry. It was an early theory of selective attention. An echo of neuroscience is spoken in the language of mystics. If we could peel back the layers of reality, we'd find that the world isn't built all at once. It's woven three threads at a time. The first thread is the personal one, the reality your brain builds just for you. Every second, your mind predicts what it expects to see, and the world you experience is mostly that prediction, a best guess shaped by memory, habit, and need. Your senses don't give you raw truth, they give you a version of reality that's efficient, stable, and just accurate enough to survive the day. This is the neurocognitive layer, the private simulation that helps you make sense of everything. Its goal is simple: minimize surprise, keep your world coherent, keep you alive. But zoom out and you find another layer, the collective one. This is the shared dream, the social world built on agreement. Money, laws, countries, status, none of them exist in nature. They exist because we believe they do. We're constantly predicting not just our own reality, but everyone else's, keeping our worlds in sync. That's what holds societies together, a network of shared expectations so tight that the story becomes solid. This is the social constructionist layer where language, belief, and cooperation turn imagination into infrastructure. Its purpose is stability, to make a world we can live in together. And beyond that, there's a third layer, the cosmic or philosophical one. This is the domain of mystics and philosophers, of Vedantic sages and idealist thinkers who whisper that consciousness isn't just in the universe, it is the universe. In this view, everything, your brain, your society, even time and space, arise from one boundless field of awareness, the infinite mind dreaming in infinite forms. This is the layer of Maya, the grand illusion, where the ultimate goal isn't prediction or consensus, but liberation, seeing through the dream. The neurocognitive layer builds your personal lens. The social layer builds the shared world you live in. And the philosophical layer reminds you that the whole thing, the entire cosmos of perception, is consciousness looking at itself. Three realities nested like mirrors: the mind, the many, and the mystery, each one as real as one above it. Each one teaching us that what we call the world might just be the story we keep agreeing to tell. The intelligence of the slime mold, the memory of the mind, the hum of vibration, the dreamer's voyage beyond the body, the thought that becomes form. They were never separate stories. They were chapters of the same revelation, that consciousness is the quiet architect behind it all. And so, if the universe truly bends to the gaze, the thought, the story, then the question left for us isn't scientific, it's intimate. Maybe the universe isn't a machine after all. Maybe it's a mirror, reflecting back whatever story we tell it. Every belief, every expectation, every act of noticing becomes a brush stroke in the picture we call reality. And together, all of us, humans, trees, stars, and unseen minds, are painting on the same living canvas. The atoms listen, the neurons answer, and somewhere between the two, the impossible happens. Matter learns to dream. If consciousness shapes the world, then perhaps the greatest experiment isn't in a lab, but in how we choose to perceive. Because every thought is a doorway, and every act of attention is an act of creation. The question is, what kind of world do we want our thoughts to build? Maybe this is what mind beyond matter truly means. Not mind against matter, not one greater than the other, but the two forever entwined, each dreaming the other into being. And so we end where we began, in wonder, looking not for answers, but for the courage to keep asking beautifully impossible questions. Stay curious, stay mutable. Thanks for listening.